Okay. Good morning. Welcome to Desert Palm United Church of Christ. We like to begin all of our services by saying, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I know today is a sad day for many of us, but it's also a joyful day because it's our great honor and pleasure to celebrate the life of an amazing human being, Dr. Leland Fairbanks. It's been my great pleasure to know Leland and to serve as his pastor, along with Reverend Dr. Helen Hunter, who I know Leland also thought of as his pastor. So Dr. Hunter and I will be co-officiating today. I've got the wireless, and so I'm going to invite you, Dr. Hunter, to go up to the microphone there, because we just want to acknowledge a few of our special guests. John Herman, my predecessor here, and one of our he's a minister emeritus of our church, knew Leland for many, many years and has graciously agreed to come and say a few words. So thank you, John and Holly, for being here. And Don Airy, the founder of our congregation, another minister emeritus, is over here with his wife Lois, so welcome, Don. And I'd imagine, knowing Leland, that many of you here occupy positions of importance, and I should probably, welcome every single person here individually, but of course, we don't have time. I do see Albert from the Arizona Interfaith and Ann Taylor Arizona Interfaith movement that Dr. Fairbanks loves so much. Many of us are familiar with the organization through the Golden Rule Banquet, and there are many wonderful interfaith events. In fact, I just attended one the other day where Dr. Hunter was on the panel over at Mesa Community College, opening some minds of the community college students. So Dr. Fairbanks, one of his many gifts was connecting folks. And so my hope and prayer is that today, in addition to celebrating Leland's life, remembering him, lifting up what a great, amazing human being he was, that we will also spend some time getting to know each other at the reception afterwards and doing the kind of networking that Leland would approve of, getting what John Lewis used to describe as in some good trouble. So Dr. Hunter, I think, would like to welcome a few folks as well.
Welcome to the celebration of the life of Dr. Leland Fairbanks. We have a representative here from the NAACP, from the East Valley, who's here, and we'd like to acknowledge him and allow him to stand up and say a few words this morning. As you know, Dr. Fairbanks was huge in the East Valley NAACP.
Yes, please. Yeah. Actually, sir, if you could even speak right with we never get you away from the microphone, huh? Okay, all right.
There's a large audience watching the live stream. They won't be able to hear you. So I'm sure they would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, up there. Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is William Smitherman. And I choose to think of myself as a friend of the man that we've come here to respect and honor. And more importantly, the kind of person that he was. He touched us all in so many different ways. And what, among many things that impressed me, was I called him and his wife the dynamic duo.
Mm-hmm.
When you saw one, you saw the other.
Both, yeah.
And that was a blessing for us, me, and everyone else that came in contact with him. This great man, his philanthropy, his beliefs, pale in words. But as a member of the East Valley National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, and as former chair of the Legal Redress Committee and former board member, I just stepped down this year from both positions. I'd like to say how much he meant to us as an organization. He could be counted on to give his pearls of wisdom. Oftentimes, whether I tapped him on the shoulder or not, as you all well know, he'd come up to me and say, Smitherman, let me tell you something about, well, what I want to say to you is, and I'd be there for an hour. A welcome hour. And I'm just kidding with you, but a few moments. But he was such an inspiration to us, not only, as I said, through his philanthropy, but just being there. He never missed a meeting if he could possibly make it. And we appreciate that. So to his family, and all of you as his friends who knew him, it's a sad day for us, but we're here to lift him up. So on behalf of the NAACP East Valley, we offer these remarks in friendship and appreciation. And may God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's now please rise and bow to your spirit for our opening hymn. Please be seated. Dr. Hunter and I just have a couple of scripture readings that we would like to share. The third one is a short one that we're all going to be saying together, which pertains to the Golden Rule, which Leland loved so much. Our first reading comes from Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And I thought of what would be appropriate to read in celebration of Leland's life. This verse came to mind. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Amen. I will be reading from 1 Corinthians, verse 13, verses 1 through 7, and verse 13. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to my childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
And our final reading is the Golden Rule, and I want to invite you all to read this with me. Leland, I think as pretty much everybody here probably knows, lived his life according to this teaching. So please join me as we say, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you.
For this sums up the law and the prophets.
Yep. Amen. All right, I'm going to invite Greg up now, who's going to share a bit about a song that we're about to hear and give us a reflection on his dad.
All right, so I'm Greg. Leland was my father. I had a brilliant extemporaneous speech ready to go. But under the circumstances, I didn't sleep much last night, and so I think I better read it. Anyway, I want to tell you about my dad. He grew up in a family struggling to survive the Great Depression. They lost the family farm, and it shaped his life. He did not want to spend money on material things, but he could spend any amount of money on good causes and supporting good works. Early in life, many of these stories I didn't learn until later, because when I was growing up, he didn't talk about himself a lot. So my sister Sue, she may have heard some of these stories too later. I don't know if she heard them when you heard them, but anyway, this is what I remember, so it must be true. All right. So early on, Dad, I understand, was thinking about joining the clergy, but he decided that being a doctor was his true calling in life. And one of the reasons I believe that is so is later in life, he told me a story of his older brother, Art, when he was growing up. Sometime around Christmas, Art got pneumonia, and they thought they were going to lose him. And he says the greatest Christmas present he ever got in his life was his mother coming downstairs and saying the doctor said Art's going to make it. So I wonder if that may be why he became a doctor. I don't know. I would speculate on that. One of my earliest memories, actually my earliest fully formed memory, is getting on a Pan American plane to go to Liberia, West Africa. Me, my mom Eunice, and Susan got on the plane to join him in Liberia because he was already there working as a Peace Corps volunteer. He was the doctor for the Peace Corps volunteers over in Liberia, West Africa. He had a long career in the U.S. Public Health Service, so he got stationed at VA hospitals. He was assigned to Native American reservations. We did a second return to Liberia where he trained nurses and physician assistants, and then he finally settled down and was assigned to the Indian Health Service Hospital in Phoenix here. And so we stopped moving, finally. It was hard on me, I'll be honest at times. But I got to see the world. And when he was at the hospital, the Indian hospital, he of course was a doctor and helped people, but he also took great pride in training community health medics. So he trained people who went out onto the reservation and provided health care at clinics. I don't know how many, but touched many lives. So let's see, he wrote articles, he made talks, presentations, he talked to government officials, he was an advocate for many, many things. He spoke at world conferences on tobacco and health. So I remember helping him get prepared for his talks. After he finally retired from the public health service, he couldn't retire, so he went and became a primary care physician for Cigna. And he did that for a few years, and then he finally retired from professional life at 70, and he became a full-time volunteer and advocate. So he probably advocated for more causes than I will ever know. So he was a full-time, his passion in life was trying to affect the lives of others and make things better. He was an advocate for civil rights after working in New Orleans in the segregated 1950s. He trained healthcare workers in Africa, community health medics here in Arizona who went out on many reservations across the country. And of course, he'd had a decades-long work controlling public smoking and trying to help people quit tobacco. He often noted smoking and breathing secondhand smoke of others was the #1 preventable cause of disease and death in this country. So Dad finally joined, he got to join Arizona's Concerned About Smoking, which was started by a woman named Betty Carnes, who started by trying to get smoking controls in elevators, because you used to be able to smoke in an elevator. She was one of the first people who agitated for a smoking section in the plane, and she was finally got a few rows set aside where you couldn't smoke. I know Dad had one story he told me where he was in a plane, there was people smoking, and some poor guy had a heart attack and passed away right there in the plane. He tried to help him, but he couldn't. So, so then he started with ACAS, and we've got some colleagues, friends, people who helped us over many, many years. He also started working towards smoke-free hospitals, and that started the ball rolling towards smoke-free bars and then smoke-free public places. So the big moment for me that I saw, and for him, was in Tempe. Now there was lots of people working beforehand, and there were things in Tucson and Mesa, but Tempe was the first that I know about, where we did an initiative to do no smoking in public places throughout the city. I know several people counseled us, don't do that, you're not gonna win, it's gonna set everybody back, but he pushed ahead, and somehow we made it, and we got that passed, and the voters passed it. So that led to the Smoke-Free Arizona Initiative in 2006, which got public smoking controls through the entire state, and then it spread through the country and around the world. So Dad, during those two initiatives, I had a lot of friends here, a lot of colleagues, a lot of people, a lot of signatures gathered, put down signs. You know, I know Dad got the most signatures, but there's some people here who could have been second most. Maybe third and fourth. So thank you all. I would name names, but I would forget one person and I would feel bad. You guys are wonderful. Dad loved every one of you, and he just appreciated everything, and he always talked about all the help he got. Even though he kind of got a lot of recognition, he loved everybody, and he always said that he couldn't have done it without you. Now, I had intended to kind of wrap things up at this point, but I can't. The events of the past few days, I cannot remain silent. Dad worked in Africa the second time for the United States Agency for International Development. And as many of you may know, Elon Musk has branded USAID a criminal organization that must be eliminated. So all this time, I thought my dad was a healthcare hero, but apparently he was part of a criminal enterprise. So anyway, I just cannot understand how the richest man in the world has decided that he has to destroy an agency that is out there feeding starving children and providing medicine to the sick, life-saving medicine. I know if Dad was alive, he would join me in saying that, and if he was physically able, he would be out there doing something, because USAID is a glorious God work agency doing the work of God, feeding people, and people are going to die without that food and medicine. I don't know what to do, but I had to say that. And so now that I got that off my chest, I will wrap up with what I was going to originally wrap up. All right, thank you. So later in life, Dad got philosophical, and he decided, he told me and Susan, he wanted 4 songs at the funeral: Amazing Grace, We Shall Overcome, Let There Be Peace on Earth, and In the Garden, which is also known as He Walks With Me. And he told us he finally remembered In the Garden because his dad would sing that song at church. And he loved listening to his dad, apparently had a good tenor voice. Dad said that his dad had a beautiful tenor voice. I never got to hear it, never got to meet that grandfather, but that song has special meaning to him. So when it was clear, Dad was in the hospital, and it was clear that we didn't have long, the IC nurse asked, the intensive care nurse asked us, she said, you know, you can go speak to him. She said that they always think, she told us they think the last thing to go is your hearing. Maybe, I don't know. But we all went, saw Dad, we told him we loved him, and said goodbye. And then Monique, the love of my life, pulled out her phone, started playing the 4 songs for Dad. She put it up on his pillow. And then it got to In the Garden, and played In the Garden, and I swear this is the truth. Literally, the song ended, and Dad breathed his last breath. And so now he's up with Mom, and so I ask you guys, help me celebrate a wonderful life. And I will just say, Dr. Leland Fairbanks left the world a better place than he found it. And at the end, what else can you say about someone that's like the greatest compliment you can give somebody? So I would like Mark to do justice to In the Garden.
No pressure. Thank you, Greg. Well, as Mark Gaston, our Minister of Music and the Arts here, prepares to sing, no pressure, Mark. No, Mark.
On the chorus, though, I'm sure a lot of you know this hymn. Please feel free to sing along with me on the chorus.
I come to the garden alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the
rendition, one of my favorite songs. But I'm here to speak a few minutes about Dr. Leland Fairbanks. If I were to choose a character that reflected the essence of Dr. Leland Fairbanks' life, I would propose the writer of the Gospel of Luke. Luke authored the parts of the Bible that we call the Gospel of Luke and the Acts of the Apostles. We don't know very much about him, but we do know that his contribution to the church and to the community was significant. Three things about the writer of the book of Luke parallel with the characteristics of Dr. Leland Fairbanks. Number one, Luke was a doctor by trade. The Apostle Paul referred to him as the beloved physician. Luke was also known as the missionary doctor because he was a traveling companion of Paul the Apostle. He joined the Apostle Paul on his second missionary journey. Number three, Luke was a faithful companion and a friend to Paul and to the end of his life. Dr. Fairbanks was all three of these: a beloved physician, a missionary doctor, traveling around the country and the world, practicing his profession and caring for communities. And he was a mighty good, steadfast, empathetic, and faithful friend to so many of us. An iconic figure who worked tirelessly to improve the health and wellness of the very community he found himself in. And he was a champion for the cause of tobacco-free living. He was not a big, large man, but he was a heavyweight in the fight against the devastating effects of tobacco smoke. He was also a champion for minorities and people of color, the disenfranchised and the underprivileged. He championed civil rights, and if I might take an exception, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Can't say that one. He saw no color, only human beings, and he treated me like a father. Dr. Fairbanks genuinely cared about the human condition, putting the interest of others before his own, and at times, family might have thought before them as well. But he loved his family so much, and he loved everyone that came in contact with him because he saw the hurt and the pain of his fellow human beings. He loved his family, and he was a beloved husband to his wife, Eunice. The way he took care of Miss Eunice, handled her with a kid glove, took care of her sometimes like a newborn baby, tender, loving kindness, and supportive love. And he was kind to his children, grandchildren, friends, colleagues, and co-workers. He was even kind to the people who really didn't like him or didn't agree with him. He was warm and gentle, and he was just like that. He was just kind-hearted. But most of all, Dr. Fairbanks was a healer, not just for the physical ailments of his people. Dr. Fairbanks made it his business to help heal the sickness of hate and racism and discrimination. As a missionary doctor, we might even consider him an evangelist of sorts, traveling around the United States teaching and preaching, quote, against the hazards of cigarette smoking, helping folks overcome habits, addictions that were ending their lives early. Dr. Fairbanks walked softly, didn't always say a lot, but he didn't beat up on people and try to shame people. He just shared information and facts and showed concern and, again, human kindness. Leland Fairbanks characteristics paralleled with the gospel writer of Luke. He was compassionate, intelligent, sincere, considerate, and warm-hearted. And Luke's gospel is unique in its perspective, considering God's historical purpose. It kind of aligns. Luke had a purpose, Dr. Fairbanks had a purpose. It focuses on his interactions with people in his community. But as we close this chapter on Dr. Fairbanks' life on earth, we don't close his book. His legacy will live on forever. He didn't live for the accolades, the praise. He did not need recognition or hand claps or standing ovations. He did good because it was good. He did right because it was right. I've never heard anyone speak negatively about him. I've never heard anyone speak negatively about Leland Fairbanks because they couldn't. Today is his day, and we honor him and we celebrate him. And oh, will we miss him. There will be some times of sadness, but when you sit back and look around and think about the marvelous things he has done, how he loved and gave and loved, all you can do when you look back on his life is praise God, from whom all blessings flow, for favoring us with a wonderful example of humanity in our midst. We praise God for Dr. Fairbanks, who was truly a blessing to us all. And I'll end with this. He was a real good godfather. I adopted him about 9 years ago when my dad passed, so he is my godfather. And before I take my seat, I want to thank Susan and Greg for sharing your dad with me. Thank you for accepting me into your family, into your lives, and into your love. And I claimed him, and I'm so glad. I could not have made a better choice. Dr. Fairbanks was the real deal. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. What a beautiful tribute. I'd like to invite Albert up now. And while Albert's making his way up, I'll say a special welcome to Mayor Corey Woods. I see he's joined us. Hey, Albert is the Executive Director for Arizona Interfaith Movement, organization that Dr. Fairbanks loved greatly.
Good morning.
Morning.
It is such a great honor to honor Dr. Fairbanks, and how I wish he was there to intervene on behalf of my own father, who died at an early age because of smoking. I think that he would have saved his life, not only for what he has really accomplished in this world, but to so many people. The Arizona Interfaith Movement is an organization of various churches, religions, and beliefs. And we honor somebody like Dr. Fairbanks, who represented what is good in humanity. I would like to invite you to think about the Old Testament and to share with you my inner Episcopalian. In the book of Wisdom, it says, "The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they seem to have died, and their departure was thought of to be a disaster. And their going from us to be their destruction. But you know, they are at peace. Those who trust in God will understand the truth, and the faithful will abide with him in love, because grace and mercy upon his holy ones, and he watch over his elect." Many years ago, when I was younger, I would often talk to somebody and point to the color of their hair. My hair is gray, so I know more than you. Dr. Fairbanks wouldn't do that, because much as he has reached life in so many decades with so much to do, he was not there for what is popular. He was there for the truth. He will not point out to his gray hair, but he will point us to what is right. He set a good example. And so, as our Jewish brothers and sisters would say, may his memory and may his spirit live in all of us. Now, he called himself a country doctor. Such humility. I am always struck by his humility. A country doctor, but he went all over the world to spread the message of goodness. You know, nowadays, doctors are forced to spend just a few minutes with you, not even look into your eyes and ask what's going on with you, to get over with it. But that was not Dr. Fairbanks. Dr. Fairbanks was just there to be your friend, was there to advocate for you. And Dr. Fairbanks was there to tell you what is unpopular. Nowadays, people want to be popular. All they want is praise and honor. And so Dr. Fairbanks was a countercultural person. And so much as I would like to kind of follow him, it's really quite difficult to do so. But Dr. Fairbanks, we are saying goodbye to you, but we will try to live and honor your memory. We will try and honor those who you have honored in this world. You have not been destroyed, but you will live forever. Thank you so much. His life has touched so many of us, and that is utter generosity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Albert. I'd like to invite Reverend Dr. John Herman up now, who served here at Desert Palm for many years and knew Leland well, so he's going to say a few words for us. Thank you, John.
There's another hymn sitting here, and I promise you I'm not going to sing it. I'd like to talk theologically. Please stay awake. I discovered that the seats here are very comfortable. When I was the pastor and the preacher here, they weren't quite as comfortable, and it kept people from falling asleep. Dr. Fairbanks, the country doctor, I do remember the day that I met him. I'm guessing from some documents I still have in my files that it was sometime in 2008. So he would have already started that last and most exciting, well, maybe not most exciting, but at least the time of his life that we got to experience it. He and Eunice both. Now, where I met him, I think he was alone that day, and I met him in one of his favorite places back in those years. It was sitting at a table outside Changing Hands bookstore with a whole bunch of clipboards and a whole bunch of petitions. And I'm an ex-smoker, so of course I wanted to sign, so I got to sign one. And then he started to just chat with me. I think I was there at that table for about an hour, and before the conversation was over, I had one of his clipboards, and I was recruiting other people to come to the table. It was quite memorable at that point. And at some point he got to wondering where I was from, and I said, well, I was about 200 yards away from you right now, at this church. And he said, well, tell me about your church. And he always asked questions for the information. And so I explained who we were and what our history was. And he said, oh, you're Congregationalists. I said, well, we're partly Congregationalists. And he said, well, my dear wife is a Congregationalist. And so we'll have to come over sometime. Well, great. He said, we always travel together. She's got some, her memories are getting older. And that was his way of saying that she remembered things in the distant past, perhaps more than right now. So, fine, we're open and welcoming to everybody, and we'll figure it out. And I probably won't even tell you that we've noticed anything. So they always sat, and it was right out in this area generally. And one of the first things I noticed about them was, because I always got to sit up here and look out there. I could never sit in the back row of the church. Tom, you'll get to do that someday. But it was during the hymn time. And the two of them are standing together, and he's got a hymnal in his hand. And she's standing there without a hymnal, singing along with the lyrics. And she's not looking at a screen. We didn't have those then. She knew all those old familiar hymns from her church background. And she knew the words of those hymns. And there were a lot of things that she'd forgotten, but she knew the words of the hymns. And so she had a sparkle. And when she had a sparkle, the guy next to her had a little bit of a sparkle too. And so, for years, we saw them there. From Changing Hands Bookstore, the country doctor. His profession and his life, and maybe it comes from where he was born and the experience of his early life, and this is the theological part. He had a calling to what he did. He had a calling and a ministry. He may never have called it a ministry. He knew it was a mission, and he would have said that, yeah, but I saw it as a very special calling. It was a ministry to the unrepresented of the world, here and overseas, as we've heard so eloquently. He was a missionary, and that's one of those kinds of callings where God asks a human being, or somehow empowers a human being to speak for God. And being one of God's messengers. Now, the ancient word for messenger was, in Hebrew, was the word that we translate as angel. An angel was a messenger of God. Okay, that may conflict with stuff we see on TV, but at any rate. And the other way that I often think of was a prophet. One who speaks for God is a prophet. And prophets have this special job. Now, as a doctor, Leland knew how to comfort the afflicted. As a prophet, he now knew how to afflict the comfortable, but so gently. I can't think of a bad word you could say about that man, because there weren't any. But he did it as a gentle kind of a prophet. He didn't scream that I know of, but he did kind of get under some people's skins, or at least what he stood for. But you knew that you were dealing with an honest guy, and a man who could be your friend. Yes, anti-public smoking, piece by piece. He changed our state, he changed our nation, he changed the native nations in our state. He spent a lot of time. I didn't have the right outfit on. I didn't want to wear a long tie today, but and this is actually from the Lakota people. It was given to me as a special gift. His special gifts came. You saw the plaque outside on the right as you leave here. But also, I was honored to be present at one of his tables, and it took more than one table for 10 guests in Mesa about probably 12 years ago, when the Arizona Faith Network gave him one of their special awards. Now, if you can't figure out at this point what that special award might have been called, there are license plates all over the state that have the golden rule on them. That is that group. That's their special license plate. And he had so many causes. Did he have that license plate on him? I don't remember. He did. Okay, thank you. I figured he would have had that one. And he was honored, and people came. The president of the Navajo Nation was there. I got to meet him. That was the nice thing about him. You could meet really important people just being around him, because they gravitated toward him and toward his smile and his easy way of figuring out how to talk to you about his passion. That was the most comfortable prophet I've ever run into. But as as so many of the things about him that I grew to love, one was totally expected, and it happened when his beloved Eunice, I believe she broke both wrists, or both, at any rate, she had a fall, and this is, I'm still here, so it was 15 years ago or more, and they were mobilized, and she had to be put in an assisted living or a special nursing facility at any rate. And so I went over to visit her one day, and it was before mealtime. I figured that might be an issue, so I came before mealtime, and we had the best conversation. I was a little concerned, how would I get a conversation started? But she was so easy to talk to, and she rallied. It was a really fun talk we had together. And then Leland showed up. And doctors and country doctors, this is one of the ways country doctors were different. She depended on him personally to feed her everything she ate at that time, because she was physically unable to do that. And here's a 70 plus, probably nearly 80 years old, beloved doctor, country physician, with a spoon or a fork, feeding the woman he had been married to for how many years? Yeah, it was memorable, and they were delightful together. And they relied on each other in so many ways. It was a calling that he probably never expected, but one which he answered without even thinking about it. It was so natural to him. And just that scene of him feeding her was so special in my heart and in my memory. I know also in the past few years he had gotten after vaping. He became an advocate, or the opposite of an advocate. He combated the vaping industry. I'm sure he didn't make a lot of friends there, because everybody was told that was safer, and he could tell you very strongly why it wasn't. He kept doing that. I always got invited to his February meeting up at the Pyle Center, which was the awards that his agency gave to people around the state and the country for their efforts in doing something about the atmosphere in our buildings and around our buildings. I know Desert Palm, we used to have a smoking section. It basically was in that retention basin down there. And I tried not to, I had no idea how many of our own members even ever went down there. We had a number of homeless visitors who were part of the IHELP program who used the ashtrays more than anybody in this congregation. But I think we all appreciated his passion on that end. But also at the, I've almost forgotten what I was about to say here. And I have. But I think I've covered it elsewhere, and I probably don't need to continue the theology anymore, but it was his faithfulness to this church that got my attention, his faithfulness to his community that got so many of the other pieces, I did remember what it was. I was always invited to come down there and offer the benediction, and then he forced me to take an honorarium for that. And so I said, well, I guess it was the opening prayer. And so I started to tell tiny little homilies, little stories about smoking and about people standing up for things like that. And so I became the preacher for the organization, at least on Saturday mornings in February, once a year. And our own Gary Heath would bring along some of his older Boy Scouts to do the flag presentation. And he made sure that both of those things happened at his community meeting here in Tempe at the Pyle Center. So, do they still do this? No. I think you used to be the MC most of the time, didn't you? Okay. Yeah, those were memorable times. It was during the strongest part of the protests at that time, and I think the job was well done, and I think he's been told that by a source a lot higher than I am.
Much, John. Well, this could be dangerous given this crowd, but I would like to open it up briefly for anybody to say a short word, a memory. It's part of our tradition here at Desert Palm when we celebrate somebody's life. So anybody who'd like to share, we do have a large number of people watching online, so if you could use this microphone, that way those folks will be able to hear you. So anybody who hasn't spoken yet would like to share. Joe, yeah, come on up. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Family member, Joe, and then Joe, you can go next. Awesome, thanks.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Just wanted to share a little bit of how Grandpa, at a time when I most needed somebody, how he impacted my life. Because I mean, throughout all the years that I knew him, he was always there to help me, and so for the last 19 months, I had the honor of loving and caring for an amazing human being. That man was my grandpa. You know, from the very beginning of the day, you know, getting him out of bed to you know, to the end of the day, getting him in bed. You know, I got to hang out with him, and you know, I did everything together. Like I said, you know, that was my grandpa at first sight. You might not believe that, and I used to get a kick out of taking him to the doctor's appointments and just seeing the look on people's faces when we would walk in together. But I mean, none of that ever mattered to him. We were family, no matter how different we looked. And I will forever be grateful for the time I got to spend with him. 2 years ago, I checked myself into a treatment center. I wasn't living right. I'd lost my wife, and things had really gotten out of control. And I spent 6 months in treatment. After leaving rehab, I came to Grandpa's house, where I would only spend a few days with my kids before going to a sober living. After making several attempts to check myself into multiple houses, I was unsuccessful and never received not one call from any of the places. That's where mine and Grandpa's journey began. Grandpa wasn't doing too well. He had just gotten over a long stay at the hospital over pneumonia. You know, he had recently lost his wife, Grandma, and me being fresh in recovery, I wasn't doing too well either. I started caring for him, and by doing that, I was able to get out of myself. It gave me a purpose. He would always ask me, "Who made the arrangements for you to start taking care of me?" They weren't mine or anybody else's. The simple fact of it all, they were God's plans. There was never a doubt in my mind that I was brought to him to love and care for him, and somehow return to him all the love and care that he so freely gave to so many people throughout his life. Not one day passed that Grandpa didn't express his gratitude to me. He would tell me that if it wasn't for me, that he wouldn't be here. My response to him was, "If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here." Grandpa was and will continue to be my recovery. He brought out the best of me, things that I never knew I had in me. I made a promise to him that I would never pick up a drink or a drug again, and I plan to keep that promise. Today, I have a new angel to watch over me and my family. Along with my wife, Benny, and my daughter, Zoe, I got Grandpa, who will be close to my heart forever. Today, I have a life worth living, and I credit Grandpa to that. Thank you.
Man, wow, what a beautiful sharing. Okay, Joe is going to come up in the back, sir, and then you can be next. Good here, Joe.
Wow. I'm not sure I've cried so much in a long time. I wrote out called it a tribute to Dr. Leland Fairbanks. I'm Joe Vredenberg, and I'm blessed to have been a recipient of Dr. Fairbanks' friendship, support, and encouragement. I came to know him after he'd been honored by the Arizona Interfaith Movement at their annual Golden Rule Banquet for all his efforts in healthcare fields. In fact, as I was preparing for what I might share with you today, I found an old clipping that mentioned Dr. Fairbanks was given the first award as a Lifetime Healthcare Heroes among the physicians in Arizona in 2002. Our relationship became connected as the Justice and Witness Ministry was organized here in Desert Palm around 2012. I appreciate his wisdom. I was inspired by all the many organizations that he was involved in and made a difference. I'm not sure a lot of people here at Desert Palm knew how supportive he was to me personally, with conversations after church, phone calls, emails, and many times how he showed up at the Arizona Faith Network events that Desert Palm was involved with. And you could count on him and Eunice to always show up for the Justice and Witness meetings here at the church. One of the most generous things that the Fairbanks did for Desert Palm in support of Justice Witness was to sponsor a table year after year at the Golden Rule Banquet for Desert Palm members, along with sponsoring a family table. He would graciously tell me how many people were to be invited to sit at the Desert Palm table, and then for me to invite them. There's a lot of us that had that privilege. A couple other events that are so meaningful to me were when I was invited and attended a Saturday day-long conference with people in the healthcare system, or had been sharing about their experiences and challenges here in Arizona. It was an eye-opener for me very much. It was followed up with being invited to attend a meeting at one of Dr. Fairbanks' doctor friends. Actually, it was a couple. The husband had been a hospital administrator, I believe, for what would be the public hospital, and his wife was a prominent pediatrician. And the group that was made up of retired physicians and others who had worked in the healthcare system, who were making a concerted effort to network and provide ongoing information in the field. I think that group has probably gone by the boards now just because everybody aged out. Out of those relationships, though, The Arizona Faith Network hosted an event on healthcare, which both the Fairbanks attended, and one of the medical doctor's friends of Dr. Fairbanks was a presenter. And I think at that time, Reverend Aaron Tamayo was the executive director of AFN at the time, and Aaron now worships here at Desert Palm with her family. I'm going to close with one of the most meaningful times for me, and I think connectedness seems to be one of our themes, or one of the many themes, maybe I should say, was for him showing support in 2018 when I was one of 3 who was awarded the First Time Volunteer Award at the annual meeting of the Arizona Faith Network, where it was held at the Hope Center at First Institutional Baptist Church. Besides the significance of where the meeting was held, one of the things I remember most about the occasion was as I was being honored, seeing Dr. Fairbanks and Pastor Tom up there at a front table. Dr. Fairbanks' presence was always so encouraging and inspiring for me. I shall miss his physical presence, but I'm very grateful to have the memories of his modeling, living out the golden rule, and mutual respect towards all people. He left his family and all of us an inspiring legacy to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Sir, yeah, I think we have time for 1 or 2 more.
I did not have a talk prepared, but I've been thinking about things since I heard about Lee, and one of the things that I've been thinking about is Nelson Mandela, because one of his famous quotes was, "You think it's impossible until it's done." That was what happened in this case. Lee fought against a multi-billion-dollar industry. I remember him sitting the first day of our petition collections, sitting alone in front of the Tempe Public Library, and thank you, Mayor, for attending today. And he started out by signature by signature collecting and getting these petitions done. And then, somehow, I don't know how, everyone joined, and the impossible happened. So I'd like to read The Impossible Dream. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable star.
Or any chance of us bringing a mic over? No? Okay. No, sir. I think we're going to be able to bring a microphone to you right here.
I need something to lean on. That's
Okay,
what's
come on up then.
Okay. I got a new leg. Oh, thank you. Our brothers and sisters, I gotta tell you, this is a very painful moment for me. I've lost my holy man. And I mean that very sincerely. Okay, who am I? What am I? I'm an Arizona boy, raised in Tempe, a bricklayer with silicosis. So years ago, probably 20 years ago now, I was fortunate enough to be on the Tempe City Council. And a rare bird, I have to tell you, because working men and women didn't get into that stuff then. But I did for some reason. Along comes this fella, I really got silicosis, and he says to me, Mr. Cahill, I'd like to talk to you about a clean environment. Voice is going too. I only got one volume. That's way up there, or it cracks and goes away. So anyways, he says, I've got this group, this bunch of folks that would like to create an environment of clean public indoor air. And I said, okay, I'd like to hear this. Of course I'd like to hear it. And then he said that, you know, we have a movement here that would like to make it so that all public venues could be accessed by somebody like yourself. And I go, wow, I gotta tell you, I'm one of those guys that tell you the truth, you know. I'm not like that Musk guy. And I've been a businessman all my life, I might add, and I never cheated an employee or a client in my life. So, back to Dr. Fairbanks. So he says, well, this is our plan here. And I listened to him, and I slowly realized I was becoming a disciple. A serious disciple. And there were places that I could no longer go as an old man. I was an old man then, so you can imagine what I am now. And I've drank enough beer to float the Missouri battleship. It was hard to go into bars and restaurants because soon after I get there, and you can see by the specimen I am today, I would have to leave because of the environment. Well, I've been lucky in my life. I've been a labor activist, and when I say brothers and sisters, I have to tell you, I still carry my Bricklayers Union card, and I'm 86 years old. I am serious in being an activist. I have never, ever been involved in anything that made my heart feel far better than to know that I was actually there when Dr. Fairbanks changed the world. How many thousands of people do you think he's actually saved their lives? That's all I want to say, brothers and sisters. It's painful for me to lose him. Goodbye.
Thank you, sir. Let's all rise in body or spirit, for we shall overcome. Well, I'm just going to share a couple stories that Leland shared with me by way of celebrating his life. I want to thank everybody who has shared, and it's just so meaningful. And it's always impossible to capture somebody's life in full, but I feel like when the more voices you have, the better. And I think it's a real tribute to a person, when you can't help but comment on what's going on in the world because of who the person was. I just think that's such a, it says something really powerful about Leland, that we can't just, have a service in a bubble, because the things that he stood for have implications for the things that are going on in the world. And so I just want to thank our speakers who've had the courage to make those connections. And Greg, I just have to say, I don't think the apple falls far from the tree. Well, I know we've heard a lot of great stories, and I just want to share a couple. I thought it was worth mentioning that in the 80s, Leland worked for the Indian Health Service on the Hopi Reservation at the Keams Canyon Hospital. And the reason that's interesting is because that, I believe, if I understand this correctly, that was the first hospital in the United States to go smokeless. And so you can imagine Leland being there. I suspect he had a little something to do with that. Because of his great anti-smoking work, it's tempting just to, or the danger is that we lose sight of some of the other things that he worked on. And it's been lifted up in general that Leland really had compassion for people, and that he saw the plight of marginalized peoples regardless of what the issue was. And there's one story that I love that he told me when he was working in New Orleans early on in his medical career, and he was told to rush this bottle of blood up to one of the upper floors. There was a patient there who needed it. It was life and death, This was in the early 60s. So it was still during segregation. And the closest elevator was for colored people only. But of course, this is Leland, and he didn't care, and he wanted to get this blood to somebody and save somebody's life. So, he pushes that button, and when the elevator doors open, it was full of people, and he explained what was happening and said, I gotta get this blood up there, this is the closest elevator. And somebody inside the elevator said, hey, we're not the ones with the problem, come on in. So he went in and went up, and, and this is classic Leland, as he's telling me the story, he just says casually, the funny thing is, within a few weeks, those signs for colored people only mysteriously just went away. So he helps integrate that hospital. That's just yet one other story. Greg stole my thunder, that story about that. The country doctor that came to the house, and it's so great. This is one of the beautiful things about stories. We love storytelling here at Desert Palm. And when your dad told me that story, Greg, he said that when he was applying for medical school, the person that he was interviewing with said, why do you want to become a doctor? And he told that story that Greg shared about his older brother being deathly ill. A country doctor came to the house, and he added the detail that, this was, I guess, post-depression, I'm not sure, but they were so poor there was no presents under the tree. But the doctor said, you guys are getting the best present of them all, because your brother, Arthur, is going to live. And so, of course, he, got into medical school, and part on the strength of that story, he said, that country doctor that came to my house and saved my brother's life. So when Leland referred to himself as a country doctor, there was a reason for that. There was a story behind that. As I got to thinking about that story and how important that was, I'm sure, I'd imagine we've all heard him refer to himself as, I'm just a simple country doctor. I think when we link it up to that story from his childhood, you know, that country doctor that went to Leland's house, gave them the gift of life, you know, saved Arthur's life. And I really think that's how Leland went on to live his life. He healed people of their illnesses. You know, he was a healing presence as a friend, as a colleague, and a fight for justice. So many different people knew him in different contexts, but he always brought the gift of life. So that's how I'm gonna remember him. I know I'm not alone in considering myself lucky for having known this simple country doctor. I want to say rest in peace, Leland, and thank you for being a guiding light for so many of us. May the lessons of your life continue to be a source of inspiration for us all, especially in these challenging times. I want to invite you all now to stand as a sign of respect for Leland. As I say our prayer of commendation, let us pray together. Into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant, Leland Fairbanks. Acknowledge, we humbly pray, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, a son of your own redeeming. Receive Leland into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the company of the saints in light. Amen. Please remain standing. We'll sing Amazing Grace together.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we'd first begun.
As our benediction, I feel I have no choice but to lift up one more time one of Leland's favorite teachings. It's how he lived his life. I would invite and challenge us all to go forward remembering him and in a way that honors this golden rule. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. Let's do that in honor of Leland. You may be seated. Just want to say after the postlude, there'll be a reception over in what we call Mission Hall. You can go through the patio over here, or you can go around to, there's another front door that'll get you in. If you go through the patio, there's a couple of restrooms, and we will be having our celebration. Everybody's invited to join us following the postlude.